everyone. I'm Aaron Wisniewski, the host and moderator for this panel discussion, and I am joined today by a group of people who are shaping the future of human experience, and they are doing it by using different types of sensory technology. So our discussion today will focus on how sensory technology creates experience and how we may use it to drive empathy and action to address some of the greatest challenges of today and tomorrow. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our esteemed panel, starting with Ana Queiroz, a postdoctoral researcher at the Virtual Human Interaction Lab at Stanford University. Hi, Ana. Thank you for joining us. We're also joined by Nadjib Achaibou, a perfumer and innovator at Symrise, as well as Olivia Jezler, an entrepreneur, sensory technology expert, and founder of Future of Smell. Thanks everyone for joining. And myself, my name is Aaron. I'm the co-founder and CEO of OVR Technology, where we use the power of scent to make virtual experiences more effective. So why don't we jump right in? Today, my first question, help me understand a little bit more about how your work allows you to create or affect the human experience. And I wonder if you can give any specific examples. Anna, your work has been kind of at the forefront of virtual reality, empathy, ethics, and human behavior. And I'd love to start with you. If you could tell us a little bit more about how you engineer experiences at Vigil, and how you think about the senses in those experiences, either now or in the future.
Sure. So in Vigil, we create virtual reality experiences to research several social and environmental issues. So when we develop a VR experience, we are very focused on how it is scientific accurate. So we have the best experts working with us to develop those experiences. And as you know, when you are in VR, you have this feeling of presence that your brain understands that the virtual environment is real and responds as it was real. So that's a very strong power of VR. And we are interested on understanding how it impacts our behavior, especially pro-environmental behavior when we talk about climate change and climate issues.
Fascinating. Thank you, Anna. Olivia, would you like to give us a little bit of level set as well?
Yeah, so my work is in developing scent experiences for either a product or a brand experience. So companies come to me usually with a lot of brand documents, and this is interesting, but what I end up having to do is really focus on what is the feeling that we're trying to create for our customers. And that is sometimes a difficult conversation because it just takes so much real reflection on what is the feeling, because we don't talk about feelings much. And so honing in on that, I think, is really the crux, like the point where, a lot of things change and we're opening up this world of emotions, which is very unique and interesting. So then what I do is, once I have this feeling of what your customer is supposed to feel or what you feel when you're using your product or your brand, is I end up mapping this in an emotional and sensory map. And once I have that, I'm able to figure out where we're going to be going, like where is your brand today? Where do they want to go? Therefore, what does the scent need to be today for your target audience? So like if you're designing something for somebody 65 plus, and I'm just going to bring a very not that exciting example, but imagine like an anti-aging product, a cream. A 65-year-old plus is expecting a certain odor or sensory olfactive profile is what she's expecting, that she already believes will make the product effective. When you're designing the same thing for somebody in their early 20s to start getting used to using these types of products, you could have a trace of that, but you have to develop a whole other olfactory world for this person to feel a relationship to this product. And then you add the collective memory of what this is for a 65-year-old. So it's a combination of really memories and emotions and the collective, what we believe works and doesn't, and working with that. So that's where I spend most of my time basically.
That's fascinating. Thank you, Olivia. And Nadjib, take us on a journey.
My journey started with not technology, but with memory, as Olivia said, and emotions and feelings, with the smell of the perfume of my first girlfriend that used to drive me mad. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great to actually shape what people can feel and interact, create love, create attraction? And so when I learned that Perfumer was a job, I actually did everything to become that when I was 16. Studied chemistry, did ISIPCA in Paris, that is the perfumery school, worked as a trainee perfumer in London, in Singapore. And actually my job now is creating something that is not so poetical, but everywhere. That is, what is the smell of clean? What is the smell of dry? What is the smell of comfort? What is the smell of antibacterial in these days? And I love creating this for so many countries because each country has their own emotional reference. And my overlap with technology came with a particular project called Munduruku that I did with the Phillies and Greenpeace, where we actually went to the Amazon jungle in Brazil to smell the Amazon, to understand a small village in the Tapajós River, and to actually inspire people to understand what it feels like to live in this place and the danger of a damp there that would destroy all the ecosystem. And how can you, when I discovered that scent could be combined with VR technology to actually make people feel things that are a lot stronger and that have meaning, and this meaning would be someone in Sao Paulo that is very far mentally from someone in a small village in the jungle, to feel this urge to act with scent, with other senses. I found it very, very inspiring, and I think that it's a path that we should follow very strongly.
I love that story. And kind of like so like my passion and my work kind of lies at the intersection of virtual reality and scent and psychology. So that's why you guys are so exciting to me. And like, and what I hear from everyone is that really like the human experiences start with sensory input. And up until recently, you kind of were relying on the world to happen to you to a large degree. But I feel like technology allows us to take control over those sensory inputs. And then we have control over the outputs in the form of memories and emotions. And one of the things that I think VR does is it democratizes experience. And so just because you are a certain type of person living in a certain place with a certain income or background or whatever, it doesn't mean your experiences are as limited. The technology democratizes the experiences, and the sensory input makes them more real and more emotional and more meaningful. So I'd love to kind of, to that point, like, how is technology kind of unlocking the power of our senses, sight, sound, visual, you know, in a way that we weren't able to do before, but how we have control over these now? And what does that mean for us? What does it mean for us now? And what does it mean for us in the future? Anna, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So just adding to what you just said about, democratizing experiences and allowing people to have visceral experiences of places that would not be able to go. So for example, we have the Stanford Ocean Acidification Experience. That's a VR experience where you embody a scientist, and then you can experience how the ocean would look like if we do not curb CO2 emissions. And this experience has been downloaded in more than 100 countries so far. It allows people that are in Sao Paulo, for example, to travel to Ischia, that's a place on the coast of Italy, and have this experience. And so far, we have been doing that with the sight. Like VR is very powerful because we can block any outside visuals and replace that with the digital content, and we know how powerful it is. adding scent for those experiences definitely going to a next level. And that's something that, especially now during the pandemic, we have been so stick to technologies and interacting with others through a computer. It would be wonderful if we could have also the scent of the place that we are trying to reach out, or, that would be amazing. And what we have been learning from the lab, and very shortly talking about years of research that we have here in the lab, is that when we compare VR, that's, this immersion of this site, compared to another media, for example, a desktop or a video where we don't have this immersion, we find repeatedly that VR helps to enhance pro-environmental behavior, enhance empathy, and also a concept that we have been researching recently that's called self-efficacy. That's our feeling that we are able to learn or to engage in a different task and be successful on that.
So it sounds essentially like it's an empathy machine. You're able to kind of generate empathy on demand, and by layering in different sensory inputs, you can make it more powerful and more impactful. Having that power is, generating empathy on demand and experience on demand can go in a few different ways, right? You could use it for good. You could use it for, I don't know if evils is the right word, but it can be, that power can be directed towards a lot of applications. And it's often said that what is measured matters. So what are the measurable behavioral results of the experiences that we each individually create, and kind of like as a research and industry community? And like often behavioral outcomes are really only measured in economic terms, like consumer behavior and GDP. But are there other outcomes that we can create using sensory technology that we have not had the ability to produce in the past? Or measure, and how do we kind of quantify and measure the social environmental impact? For example, OVR, we were recently involved in a VR climate change piece that allowed users to experience firsthand the destruction of a Samoan village from rising sea levels. And we hope that the result of that is an outpouring of financial or time support, which we can directly translate, into climate action. So, Olivia, can we start with you? I'd love to hear kind of like, and leading up to that, what are the measurable results that you see with you and your clients when you introduce scent into a scene, into an environment, into a scene, into a brand? And those can be consumer driven, measurable results, or they can be a little bit more intangible kind of emotional results. But kind of like, what is if we take this, like scent and technology creates experience, what is the result of the experience?
The result of the experience is trust in a product or experience or a message. So you're able to, our brains, if everything is aligned, all the senses are aligned in the way we experience things, and scent people usually forget. So that's why it can create an inalignment or incongruency in our mind. So once you add scent together with the sounds and smells and with the visuals, you're able to really create a holistic experience that will create a more impactful emotional response. It'll be more directed and it'll be more impactful, and people will be able to trust this message. So in terms of an outcome, I think things like, yes, economic, like sales or signing up for something, I think could really work. What I think would be interesting though also would be helping others. How willing are we to now help other people after we experience this thing? Or how kind will we act in our next interactions? I think things like these are less economical, less measured in a very strict way. But I do believe that if we're able to use this technology for just human kindness, that's huge, because like most of these issues that are happening are because we are not able to empathize with people in other countries or other cultures, or even who are right next to us, but live a very different life. So I do think that the power of scent is able to help us bridge this, understand these other people, and then trust them and, build some sort of rapport and kindness and willing to help them. I think that that would be really amazing to see in the future.
I would love to see more trust and compassion and empathy. You know, and as more and more of our experiences are virtual and digital too, you know, I
Right.
think it's easy to act less human in certain circumstances when you're so removed from the person, and when it's kind of abstracted into a digital form. Um, Nadjib, you have a really interesting position in this too, as a perfumer and fragrance designer. Your job is to both create memories and emotions in a very practical way, but also in a very kind of poetic and romantic way. So give me, uh, you know, kind of the result, the measurable result, if you can, of designing these products and these fragrances and these experiences.
I would say that poetry is the thing that can be included or added by scent, because it's invisible, because everyone has their own interpretation. That's how you create this kind of very poetic emotional response that can add to the concept of the empathy machine. That this machine could also be a machine that, like you said, dehumanize people by making them kill each other on VR and very quickly go into a very different path than empathy and compassion. A measurable result that I like to see, and I'm very low tech here, is that in our experiences we did with the Phillies, we were in front of the person wearing the VR mask, waving scent and putting heat in their hands, in their back. So this human part of the virtual reality experience is for me what really gives the empathetic part, the empathy. And a measurable result was very clear, is that we did an experience with a VR movie that narrates the life of a child in a refugee camp. And a lot of people cried in the end. And that's a result that is, maybe it can be measured with the VR headset if it gets more humid. But the truth is that when you see that, you know that you're doing something correct, you know, that someone has the emotional response in a positive way that you want. There are tears not only of sadness, but also of a lot of complex feelings. And I think that to take it a little bit further, it democratizes the experience. Yes, I think it democratizes immersive experiences, because screens have given us so much information today. We have information about any part of the world that we would like to, about any subject. And suddenly we are in this very privileged position that is going to last for a few years, where VR is still experienced as an immersive experience. And I think that this is a huge shift that we could try to use in a very positive way. And I'm going to urge companies that want to be sustainable, that want to stop just greenwashing, to actually create a new kind of narrative in VR in these years coming, and using a multisensory VR aspect to send messages that are good and that will help the world in the vision that individuals or company have, that is not just selling. And selling is good, but also preserving a forest is important for a company that sells outdoor equipment. So how can we save all these things that are going to be essential to our businesses and our lives in the future?
Absolutely. And I wonder, you know, a lot of the technology that we're talking about right now, these immersive technologies and these sensory technologies, are still like really at the early adoption stage. But as they become more and more prolific and like woven into the fabric of people's lives, the same way that the internet is now, you know, what does that future look like? You know, if we fast forward 5 or 10 years, what role does sensory technology have in our lives? And maybe even more relevant to this summit, what role does it have in business and in industry and entrepreneurship? You know, I think it's like, you know, at this stage, and especially for us, it's easy to kind of like talk very grandly about it and what it could be. But it's also interesting to think about, okay, what is the practical everyday? You know, how is it going to end up? You know, how is it going to end up as a tool in the hands of kind of businesses and entrepreneurs? And so I'd love to kind of look towards the future a little bit, the near and the medium term future, and get your take on how sensory technology is going to be woven into that fabric. And how do these two separate things, right, like profits and commercial interest, and climate health and rising sea level, how do those things slowly become, instead of mutually exclusive and competing, kind of like competing priorities, how do they become the same thing? And can sensory technology contribute to them not being mutually exclusive and being kind of the same thing?
Can I say something?
Yes.
I believe scent, the power of scent, is going to be able to help us make better choices. For example, the Beyond Burger. It's not made of meat, but because of the engineering of the flavor experience, we're much more likely to take and eat that burger because it tastes good, it looks right, it feels right. So that's, I think, the role that our senses will play. They'll be able to help us, guide us emotionally, sensorially towards whatever direction the creators are aiming to take it, right? So for better food choices, I see a lot in terms of food, a lot of potential for food and sustainable food choices and making it taste like something we would really love and enjoy.
That's a lot of, that's definitely a lot of responsibility. It sounds like too, is that with technology in general, of course, and like, we're talking about sensory technology, because we have that ability to consciously and subconsciously guide behaviors and decisions and create motivations. Internet 2.0 or the metaverse or like whatever comes next is, how that functions is a result of the way how people build it. And so I think that's like a really, really important point is that, yeah, that it's going to be guiding our decisions and it can be guiding them hopefully towards good things. Anna, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's a good question. And just adding on what Olivia was talking about, the scent of food, for example. So here we are very concerned about, scientific research and what we can talk about after running a study that's very scientifically accurate. So for example, for food, what we know that integrating scent to VR, when you're watching, for example, a donut, how it would impact your satiation, and how much you eat after that. And that was a wonderful study led by Benjamin Lee here in the lab. And he found that participants, so comparing participants that had this scent and touch, like they could smell and touch the donut while having these visuals of the donut in VR compared to who didn't have the scent or touch, but just the sight of the donut in VR, they found that participants that had the sight and touch cues, they reported higher satiation, and also they ate less donut after the experience. So that's one example of how these virtual experiences, they can impact and translate into actual behavior. And that's something that we are very interested in here in the lab. We always try to measure how this translation happens, and we have behavioral measurements after each experience we conduct. So for example, one other experience about empathy, as we are talking about that. So we had Fernanda Herrera, a former PhD student here in the lab, conducting this great study with hundreds of participants where she compared, again, VR, so VR with not VR. So participants that had experience of they became homeless, either in VR or just watching a video of that. And after that, she had several questions, but one important measure was she asked the participants if they would sign a petition to support homeless people here in California. And what she found was that participants in VR, they signed significantly more than participants that were on the video condition. And that result persisted 8 weeks after. So she asked all the participants again if they would sign the petition, and this difference was still significant 8 weeks after. So those are experiments that give us cues of how VR and pairing VR with scent could lead to behavior and behavior change in the future.
That's incredible and exciting and inspiring too. And Najib, how do you kind of picture the practical application of technology like this in the future?
I think just to bounce on something Olivia said before, I think is congruence. And congruence is very important with all the messages we try to send these days and all the direction and the visions that we have for the future. It's nice to have a scent somewhere in our experience. The best thing is to have the proper scent and the scent that makes everything connect. When you don't take responsibility for the multisensory aspect of any experience you create, things happen. Like a garbage truck passes next to you and suddenly your beautiful experience stinks. And I'm sure that less people will sign up in that particular moment, but you can also use a garbage bin to make people understand what the experience of being homeless might be sometimes. No, and so using the correct scent or not using scent, but doing it in a meaningful way can help any message to be more congruent. So here I'm gonna applaud the work of Olivia and Anna's lab, because I think that they help us guide the creations toward more congruence. And by doing research on important topics like empathy for people that are different and suffering, we can really push forward for proactive creations that will make the world a little more empathetic.
Mm-hmm. And so Najib, and to everyone too, but I'll start with you. Is there a very specific, concrete call to action that you'd like to kind of leave everyone with? Like, what can someone do right now to help push us towards this inspiring future that we'd like to see?
Well, it's if there's a thirst for creations. People like to create things that touch people, and I would say that we can all again responsibilize ourselves to spend some time creating things that make us be in the position of someone else. Like in the end, going to the Amazon River to create these scents. I could have created them from home, but the truth is that they're completely different, and the experience of being there, really immersed in reality, to create an immersive experience is as important as any, and it changed me. And yeah, responsibilize yourself to put money, time, effort into creating in this unique opportunity that is creating VR, multisensory VR experiences in this particular moment when it's still so relevant and new and exciting, and not just another means of consumption.
Perfect. Anna, do you have a concrete call to action for, especially folks who might be listening at this summit, who are interested in, that intersection of business and entrepreneurship and planet health and social activism?
Yeah, so we have been seeing the increase of VR use, especially for domestic uses. And I think one important responsibility, as Nadjib said, is to create good content. So I always like to say that VR are like books. Like we have awesome books, and we have books that are not the way we would like them to be. So we have the same in the VR content. So it would be very important that they keep in mind, so developers, of what are the consequences, what behavior change is this VR experience bringing to the users, and focus on, a more kindness between people, focus on how we can support and help adaptation strategies for climate change, and use the power of those technologies that we have. That here in the lab, we have been seeing several times how VR can be more helpful in triggering pro-environmental behavior than other media.
Responsible stewardship of powerful technology and science.
Exactly.
Olivia, what kind of concrete call to action would you like to leave us with?
Well, I would say, like, we really, as a community, as pioneers, really need to think and feel what is the intention of what we are creating. Like, and is this really helping people? Is it helping the planet? I think it's about digging deep and really understanding why you're doing something and really evaluating, is this going to be helping, mental health? Like, what are the problems people are suffering from right now? And how can we help the people today and the people in the future of problems that we see that might be coming up? So I think that's really our responsibility, is to look and think about what is the real intention? Where are we going with everything we create? And that's what I believe.
Inspire action and take responsibility for the results. Well, I can't tell you how exciting it's been to have you all here and talk with me and each other. I know that we could probably keep going for hours and hours on this one. It would get more and more deep and intense. But I think that's all the time we have for now. So we're going to pause. And I know that we're going to turn it over to folks who are watching for some question and answer. But thanks again to all three of you. And I look forward to doing this again sometime soon.